masterfully, he led the couple in a prayer considered to be the strongest act of penitence in the Church of England. It was written by Thomas Cranmer, Archbishop of Canterbury, to the King Henry VIII. Listen to this prayer. We acknowledge and bewail our manifold sins and wickedness, which we from time to time most grievously have committed, by thought, word, and deed against thy divine majesty, provoking most justly thy wrath and indignation against us. We do earnestly repent and are heartily sorry for these misdoings. Asked if they would support the prince in his marriage vows and his loyalty for the rest of his life, the congregation bellowed in unison, "We will." Hello, you guys. Welcome back to my channel. And if you're new, then welcome. I hope to earn your subscription today. Well, we are to a major event in the palace papers and in the lives of the royal family. Today we are going into the marriage of Charles and Camilla. Finally out of the wilderness years, finally out of her waiting. We're going to get into the wedding. I hope if you are a regular that you will like this video, and it helps with the algorithms. I don't even like having to ask, but just as a reminder, I know it helps me when I'm watching a YouTube video because my goal always is to help the creators that I enjoy their stuff. And so I'm happy to like, and I hope you're happy to like too if you genuinely do like this video. Let's get into it. Ultimately, it was not august canonical opinions, but an infuriating social incident in November 2004 that pushed Charles across the matrimonial finish line. The son of one of Charles's closest friends was getting married to the Duke of Westminster's daughter at Chester Cathedral. He was the Prince of Wales's godson, and it was all set to be the society wedding of the year. A guest list of 650 included the Queen and Prince Philip, Charles and Camilla, and William and Harry. The two princes were close friends with the family and would be serving as ushers. Charles and Camilla were apprised of the seating plans the weekend before the wedding, and the arrangements revealed Mrs. Parker Bowles to be relegated to the social margins of the event. She had been expecting to sit directly behind Charles, who protocol demanded would join the Queen and Prince Philip up at the front. But no, Emily Van Cutsum, the mother of the groom, I believe, had stuck Camilla on the other side of the cathedral with the bride's friends at the back and told her that she could not enter or leave by the main door. What made the snub especially explosive was that there was already bad blood between Camilla and the Van Cutsums. Claiming a strict allegiance to royal protocol, Emily Van Cutsum resisted Charles's demands to upgrade Camilla's seat in the cathedral. Dislike of Emily, the haughty daughter of an Amsterdam banker, was one of the few judgments that Camilla and Diana shared. A point in her disfavor was that she was one of 6 female confidants to whom Charles gave a special brooch when he married Diana, suggesting a closeness that neither his wife nor his mistress liked. Oh, it gets grosser and grosser, doesn't it? To have his own little harem of, he's got his wife, he's got his side piece Camilla, and he's also got 6 brooch girls who are receiving a special piece of jewelry to signify their confidant relationship with Charles. Camilla refused to be understanding this time. She would not be humiliated. The prince had to choose between attending the wedding without her or snubbing his closest friends and his godson. It was Camilla's line in the sand. Fortunately, there is always an exit if you are the Prince of Wales. On the evening of the wedding, duty suddenly called. He found himself obliged to visit the barracks at Warminster in Wiltshire to meet with the families of soldiers who had been killed in a suicide attack near Fallujah. Meanwhile, Camilla was otherwise engaged. It was a devastating social setback for Hugh and Emily Van Cutsem. Game, set, and match to Parker Bowles. The Prince of Wales had made an unprecedented show of support for the woman he loved. That was satisfying, but not sufficient for Camilla. At this point, she felt there would always be some reason why the moment wasn't right to make her partnership with the Prince of Wales official. Her feelings were supported by the mildest of men with the strongest of principles. Her father, Major Shand. Now 87, he had become increasingly concerned that his beloved daughter was being put in a shoddy position. Although he loved the prince dearly, royal biographer Penny Junor said, he thought him weak and was worried about how vulnerable he had made Camilla by allowing her to live in limbo. I just want to say, what a wonderful delight it is to have an engaged, loving, kind, protective father. This role has been diminished in recent decades, and I just want to speak up here in 2025 for the role of a loving dad, somebody who will go to the mats for you if you are being mistreated by a young man, as if you're just a young, vulnerable daughter and you don't understand everything. To have a dad who goes to bat for you, who speaks up on behalf of character, who asks hard questions of a young man that might be seeking you. And I realize, like, a lot of people are out on their own. They're dating at 28 and they're dating, 30-year-olds or whatever. But I see it in our home. Our daughter is actually close to 19, and the role that he has played in her life in these last few years as she has navigated those beginnings of, people who show an interest or first relationship and that kind of thing has been phenomenal. It's been so good to have a strong man who is for her, that has helped navigate those things, who has been a resource for her, who has been willing to interact and ask hard questions of a young man that might come, and who has been able to show her and give her insight into where her lines in the sand should be. And I see that from Major Shand, that he was willing to step up for her, that he had her interests in mind, that he was caring about his own daughter. And here she is, a 50-something-year-old lady, and yet he's still looking out for her good. He's still seeing his beloved daughter, and he's seeking her good, her advancement, her protection. It's such a delight to see a good, loving father. The major decided to make a rare intervention. He took the prince aside and said, "I want to meet my maker, knowing my daughter's all right." Charles, who had deep respect and affection for the old war hero, felt chastened enough to pay attention. The humiliation of the Van Cutsem affair could not be repeated. It's nonsense. It's insulting, he acknowledged. What would happen, for instance, if William married first? Would Mrs. Parker Bowles be banished to the back of the church? Charles proposed to Camilla at last over New Year's at Burke Hall on bended knee. They had each spent Christmas with their families, and Charles had briefed his mother, his sons, and the rest of the family at Sandringham on what he planned to do. The Queen agreed that cleaning up the Camilla business, regularizing her role, was the only course that now made sense for the working efficiency of the firm. One of the Queen's oldest friends said, "The Queen likes things to be tidy, and despite what's been said, she isn't in the least bit vindictive. Since Camilla isn't going to go away, she may as well be welcomed." William and Harry would never fully embrace Camilla or understand her appeal, but as everyone else understood, she was non-negotiable in their father's life. It's interesting to read this. This book was published right before the Queen's death, 5 months before, in fact. So I'm looking up the exact date. It's a 2022 book. And something funny, it's only 3 years later now, but I would say that sentence of "they would never accept her" has actually been proven a bit untrue. One of the interesting things, I think, if you look up Richard Eden, his he has a little show he's doing now called Reading the Royals, and it is fascinating. He'll take two royal figures and he will chronicle the progression of their relationship over time. So, for example, he did one with Princess Catherine and Meghan Markle that's fascinating, and he shows the emotions and the range of events and certain points in which you could tell the relationship was shifting or was strained. Very fascinating. Each one of his that he's done have been very insightful as to royal relationships, but I believe he did one, I think it was a Reading the Royals. If not, he has a little feature somewhere that you can find on YouTube. I will try to look for it and link it in the comments. But that shows the progression of the relationship between William and Camilla. And it is a fascinating case study because I think it actually is different than what Tina Brown is writing here. I think he has come to appreciate Camilla. And there's a few moments in particular that stand out in the video that Richard Eden did where the two of them are like cracking up together. And like it's a full body, like so hilarious, so losing control of your laughter in a way that you don't do with somebody that's just kind of an acquaintance or somebody you're putting up with. That actually there's like a full-throated, hearty laughter happening between the two of them. And so I think even this is not entirely true for William. Now, Harry, you know, we all know in Spare what he chronicled and the way he feels about Camilla. But I do think that William has come around. I think he, from the vision that is given through photography and videography over the years, that his position has changed remarkably. The Queen signed off on Charles choosing Camilla's engagement ring from one of the Queen Mother's collection. It was an Art Deco heirloom featuring a 5-carat emerald cut diamond in the center with 3 diamond baguettes on each side. More valuable than the engagement ring given to Diana. Camilla always loved heritage bling, and Charles loved giving it to her. His grandmother would have turned in her grave at Windsor Castle if she had known who was destined to wear her emerald-cut diamond bequest. For Camilla, the ring on her finger was the ring of fire through which she had passed over 30 tumultuous years. She was inextricably bound to Charles. Why had she stuck it out? Some of her friends believe that by temperament and with her love of independence, she would have preferred the Alice Keppel role, but only in the discreet era that Alice Keppel lived. Mrs. Keppel never had to endure trashings by the British tabloids, the humiliation of the Camillagate tapes, the demonization after the death of the Princess of Wales, and the financial insecurity of divorce. Nor was there the remotest chance that Mrs. Keppel could ever end up as queen. Camilla had been patient, but never passive in her slow advance. She was about to become the second most important woman in England after the Queen. There were more wins. She was able to ensure the prince established a substantial trust for her children, and that Charles prevailed against legal advice by waiving a prenuptial agreement. She had seen enough of royal parsimony to ensure that she protected her future. They chose Valentine's Day 2005 as the date to release the engagement news and Camilla's new title of HRH, the Duchess of Cornwall, bestowed by the Queen. Clarence House announced that when the prince succeeded the throne, it was intended that his wife would be known by the galleon-like title of Princess Consort. So, this was much discussion at the time, right? That would they become the Prince and Princess of Wales? I mean, nobody could stomach that. No one wanted Camilla to be the Princess of Wales, although my understanding is that legally she did become that. But she was styled as the Duchess of Cornwall. And so the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall were their used titles. And then they did say this whole thing that she would be known as the Princess Consort, that she would never become queen, because there were so many people saying, she'll never be my queen. And I think this is one of those things where Prince Charles was trying to play to public opinion. Of course, now she's Queen Camilla. And people tried to even parlay with that, like, you know, Princess or Queen Consort Camilla. Now she's just Queen Camilla. Clarence House settled down to planning a wedding as different as possible from the unhappy associations of the first celebrated Wales union. A civil ceremony at Windsor Castle on Friday, the 8th of April, 2005, avoided religious controversy. A service of prayer and dedication led by the Archbishop of Canterbury at St. George's Chapel brought ecclesiastical stature. There would be no glamorous honeymoon on the royal yacht. It was gone anyway. Instead, the newly married couple chose a few quiet days tramping around in the biting cold at Burke Hall. It would all be very low-key, very elegant, very age-appropriate. Except it wasn't. In perhaps what American shrinks would see as a gesture of acting out that revealed the true turmoil of his feelings, there was a tabloid furor in January 2005 over leaked pictures of Prince Harry wearing a Nazi uniform from General Rommel's Second World War Africa Corps at a costume party. An incensed Charles, who was a nervous wreck, demanded that Harry make proper apologies to Jonathan Sacks, chief rabbi of the United Hebrew Congregations. Prince Charles also blasted William, who had reportedly dressed in a skin-tight black leotard with leopard skin paws and a tail, for allowing his younger brother to make such a witless choice. I mean, the funny thing about this description is that his own choice was witless. So what are we putting on the shoulders of the older brother when he's wearing a black leotard and a little tail? I mean, if Harry hadn't have done the other, then William would have been the national joke of like, why is our future king in a skin-tight leotard? This is not honorable at all. So, no, he was not displaying good judgment. So it's not surprising that he didn't have the judgment to say, Harry, cut that costume, pick a different one, buddy. I will say, Harry has gone into great depth about this, costume decision, and there's been much discussion of it, and I'm not going to get into it here, but suffice to say, these are definitely two young men displaying bad judgment, but Prince Harry in particular, there are certain lines that you just don't cross. And even actually this last week in class, one of my students made a comment in class that crossed a social line. And the entire class reacted. It happens. And this is the stage of life, say 16 to 22, somewhere in there, where you are sorting out which lines can I cross? Can I dress up like this? Can I talk like this? Can I try this behavior? Could I try on this personality trait? And how will it go? How will it go for me socially if I do X, Y, or Z? But this was a bad moment that definitely marked his life and would have been embarrassing to Prince Charles right at this particular moment. The royal reporter Robert Jobson of the Evening Standard caught wind of the wedding scoop and bounced Clarence House into announcing the plans early on the 10th of February. At first, it seemed all right. Charles and Camilla were due that evening to go to a charity function at Windsor Castle, and this offered a friendly flashbulb moment. The Queen illuminated the round tower of the castle as a festive gesture. The problem was this. The usually punctilious team led by Michael Pete had made an unfortunate mistake. The small print in the Marriage Act 1994 allowed marriages to be solemnized in certain approved premises. So if Windsor Castle was going to be given a license to host the wedding of Charles and Camilla, then it also meant that any old Brit could apply to marry at the Queen's home as well, that it would be an approved location. The venue for Charles and Camilla to exchange vows had to be switched from the castle to the Guildhall. The Queen, as Supreme Governor of the Church of England, felt that her position did not permit her to attend a civil ceremony. She would now only attend the blessing in St. George's Chapel. All of this offered an irresistible cock-up narrative for the press. Everybody's saying it was all nonsense, that the Queen was snubbing her son, that he was humiliated, that Charles was humiliating his bride, that Camilla would be a town hall bride. In March 2005, Charles took the boys skiing the Easter holidays at the Swiss resort of Klosters. Reluctantly, he agreed to a press opportunity in the snow that would give William and Harry a chance to express their enthusiasm for the wedding. And the boys behaved with media-savvy geniality. William, when he was asked if he looked forward to being a witness, he gamely answered, "As long as I don't lose the rings, that's the one responsibility." That is gamely. That is kind of a young man who, we're going to all be honest about it. He was never for this marriage. And, even though now things have changed, at this moment for him to be like that is really quite something. For him to be kind and winsome and able to say something just polite and pleasant and engaging about it rather than being sullen or silent or just walking away. I did want to pull up, here is a photo of what the two of them looked like, just to refresh all of our memories at this time. So William had graduated and Harry was getting close. I think maybe he was past Eton at this point. Young men. At the end of March, the Bishop of Salisbury got in on the act. He seemed to speak for those not happy with the Archbishop of Canterbury's willingness to sanction the remarriage of the future Supreme Governor and Defender of the Faith. In a statement, he insisted that Charles and Camilla should apologize to Camilla's ex-husband for their part in breaking up the marriage before they were allowed to receive a church blessing. Apparently, those who knew the colorful sexual history of the supposedly wronged Brigadier Andrew Parker Bowles thought this was a humorous comment for the bishop to make. Charles was distraught at how the wedding was being received. Of course he was, because we've seen in this book how much he cares about public opinion and how much he was almost ruled by it himself. It's funny that he is the supreme ruler and yet he's ruled by the people. He made frantic phone calls to his friends. Some of them thought he and Camilla should have just gone off to Scotland like Princess Anne when she married her solid second husband. The Queen, always such a stickler for detail herself, was exasperated at yet more indignities blowing up around Charles. Even Camilla wondered aloud to her staff, will the nastiness ever end? The life of Mrs. Parker Bowles was already beginning to change. She now had an armed protection officer at her side, and she could never again nip out to a store without one. While Charles went on a tour of Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, and Sri Lanka, Camilla spent her time with her sister in fittings for her 2 wedding outfits, one for the Guildhall and one for the blessing. She visited the hairdresser, though there was no threat of her having a major change in style. Charles's tour of Australia was rewarded with a poll saying that 59% of Australians thought he should stand aside and give the throne to William. It's kind of shocking to read this now, that even still, I knew that, in the throes of the divorce, of course, those numbers were high, but that even at this point, just go ahead and stand down, pass the throne to your son. 6 days before the wedding, the Pope died. And not just any Pope, John Paul II, the most consequential pontiff in the modern era. He helped end communist rule in his native Poland and eventually all of Europe. His funeral convened the single most august gathering of heads of state outside of the United Nations. The Queen insisted that Charles would represent her on the appointed funeral day, which happened to be the date on which he was supposed to be getting married. Can you believe it? So their announcement for the wedding was preempted by a scoop, someone who got a scoop, and so then they had to release the note 4 days earlier than they had planned. But then now, so 6 days before the wedding now, in a way that can't be anticipated, their wedding day has been marked, and the wedding was postponed for 24 hours. Religious and political propriety demanded it. The otherwise stalwart Camilla went into meltdown. It must have felt as if Diana and the Queen Mother had joined forces from beyond the grave to rain down thunderbolts on her special day. She developed a chronic case of sinusitis and spent the week at Ray Mill with a group of girlfriends ministering to her shredded nerves. Her old friend Lucia, who had first introduced her to Charles, flew in and arrived from Chile and brought Camilla homemade chicken soup. She was really ill, stressed, Lucia said, and terrified she wouldn't make it. But once Camilla's game face was on, she had never looked better. Radiating hesitant joy, she stepped into the Queen's Rolls-Royce Phantom 6 to join Charles for the journey to the Guild Hall. It was a killing comparison to know that the world was thinking about that other bride, the enchanting 20-year-old lamb to the slaughter, who had gone before her up the steps of St. Paul's Cathedral in a riot of princess doll taffeta. But Camilla had her own muted dazzle that day. Aged 57, unvarnished, unblushing, unsvelte, she was someone that Diana had never been, the woman whom the Prince of Wales had wanted all along. Yeah, there's something to be said for that, isn't there? That they had their moment together. They finally got there. Whatever you feel about the two of them, we can all see how good that would have been, how rare of a moment to get to just have unbridled joy, finally, in a way that was sanctioned, in a way that was acceptable to everyone, at least in the long run, that at the end of it all, everything would be official, Camilla no longer excluded, no shame and humiliation would have to be imbibed on their part in any future engagement. People might still feel it, people might still give it to them, but now their relationship could move forward in a way that was honorable and seen in the sight of everyone as honorable. The fashion press agreed that Robinson Valentine pulled off a double win. A porcelain blue chiffon dress and matching coat embroidered with 5 varieties of gold thread that glowed in the light of St. George's Chapel. She really did look beautiful. I've looked back at photos of that event, and with her hat and her hair, she really looked lovely, happy. The two of them looked so joyful. And there was something wonderful, I think, about her being a glowing bride at, yes, 57, unsvelte, not the thinnest woman in the world, not, the splash plate model, but just the woman he loved. There's something honestly lovely about that. As a Christian, I will just tell you guys, I actually got raked over the coals for this by some people when I put it on my private page, but I see in the wedding of Charles and Camilla something akin to the Christian faith. In the Christian faith, the church is known as the bride of Christ, and by admission into becoming a member of the church, you admit your unacceptability. You admit your shame and guilt and sin, and you repent of all of it, and you turn away from it in order to become part of the bride of Christ. And so, in the analogy with Charles, of course, he is not the spotless prince, but Jesus is, and the whole Christian picture culminates in a wedding of Christ with his bride. And so to me, as I looked at Camilla and saw the photo of her so radiant, the former things in that moment, everyone's aware of them, and yet they're being washed away. They're being made gone by the propriety of this marriage. Now, it's an imperfect analogy, but to me, it gave me a little glimpse of this is like what Christ has done for the church. Again, not every one of you is a Christian, but for me as a Christian, with my eyes, I thought, what a beautiful picture that he is making her acceptable by this act of marriage, and together he is unionizing himself with her in love, in joyful, including love that's welcoming her into the heart of his life. I thought she looked lovely. The crowds lining Windsor's narrow, winding streets were respectable enough. 20,000 to Diana's 600,000 in 1981, so far less crowds. But at least they weren't hostile. 28 guests, including Princess Anne, Prince William, and Prince Harry, witnessed Charles and his new Duchess's vows in the modest Ascot room of the Guildhall with its single brass chandelier and fresh flowers picked from the gardens at Highgrove and Ray Mill. So flowers from both of their gardens, which I want to point out, we've read in this book, were provided by the prince himself. It's another Christian metaphor that God himself provides what we need. Anyway, my brain is going there now. Charles looked immaculate in a morning suit and dove gray waistcoat. Bride and groom exchanged wedding rings made of special Welsh gold. When a cut of it was requested from the family's remaining reserve from the Clogau mine, I'm sure I'm not saying that right, that the Clogau or Clogau mine maybe, it's probably a different way because it's Welsh, but from a mine in Wales, they took a little gold and the Queen had possession of it. When a cut was requested, the Queen remarked, "There is very little of it left. There won't be enough for a third wedding." That's very cutting and clear. This is it, Charles. Her gift to Charles was a brood mare for which she would pay the expenses. At St. George's Chapel, 800 guests waited eagerly for the newlyweds to arrive. Energy was high, bordering on euphoria. This was the Camilla Charles home team, the myriad friends and supporters who had provided safe houses for them to tryst in. They had listened patiently to Charles's moans, kept Camilla's secrets, defended them in the press, and acted as advocates with the Queen. Andrew Parker Bowles appeared mysteriously gratified. He was behaving like the mother of the bride, one of the congregation told me. It's also weird, isn't it? All of this upper-class British stuff. That, remember, he was looking on as they were kissing, and he and Camilla were still married, and he's like, "It seems like the Prince of Wales is really pleased with my wife." And now he's acting like the mother of the bride. It's so weird. So not right. Two guests whose absence raised eyebrows were Hugh and Emily Van Cutsum. Fresh off a plane from Rome, the Archbishop of Canterbury officiated the blessing. Masterfully, he led the couple in a prayer considered to be the strongest act of penitence in the Church of England. It was written by Thomas Cranmer, Archbishop of Canterbury, to the King Henry VIII. Listen to this prayer. "We acknowledge and bewail our manifold sins and wickedness, which we from time to time most grievously have committed, by thought, word, and deed against thy divine majesty, provoking most justly thy wrath and indignation against us. We do earnestly repent and are heartily sorry for these misdoings." Asked if they would support the prince in his marriage vows and his loyalty for the rest of his life, the congregation bellowed in unison, "We will." The Queen sat through all of this with her customary wedding face. No expression at all. But one of the guests told me there was a marked difference in her demeanor in the after party, where she exuded genuine affection for both Camilla and her son. Were the long years of exclusion an expression of form rather than feeling? The prince's supportive and uncomplicated second wife has qualities the Queen has always admired: constancy, discretion, stoicism under fire. When Charles and Camilla emerged to cheers in the sunshine outside the chapel, the Queen disappeared into a side room to watch the Grand National. She emerged into the buzzing reception that was taking place in the state apartments at Windsor Castle to make an unusually inspired toast that led the headlines the next day. This is hilarious. I have two important announcements to make. I know you will all want to know who was the winner of the Grand National. It was Hedgehunter. Deadpan pause. Secondly, having cleared Besher's Brook and the chair and all kinds of other terrible obstacles, they have come through, and I'm very proud and wish them well. My son is home and dry with the woman he loves. They are now on the home straight. The happy couple are now in the winner's enclosure. So she used the race as a metaphor for her son's marriage, and she just made a whole joke of it that I know you're all waiting to hear who the winner was of the race, so let me tell you. Then she disappeared into the side room again to watch a replay of the race. That's so the queen. She really cared about her horses. Camilla and Charles worked the room with an air of bewildered jubilation. Patty Harverson remembers it as one of the most joyful weddings he has ever attended, releasing years of pent-up tension within the royal family and their entire circle of mutual friends. William and Harry rushed outside to hang just married signs onto the back of their father's Bentley before the bride and groom left for Burke Hall. It was transparent that William was happy for them, a photographer noted, and Harry, but more so William. You could see that what mattered to him was the happiness of his father and how good Camilla was for him. What Diana's younger son was thinking, only he can tell us, and doubtless will. And he did. 1 year after this book was published, of course, Prince Harry released his book, Spare, where he talked about these very things. So yes, but do you guys see where we are? We are wrapping up today, but we are now to part 2, where the very first chapter, I have to tell you, is The Prince's Next Door, William and Harry's Competing Realities. So we are going to be getting into these two right here, which are still at the center of some of the difficulties in the monarchy. So I hope you'll come back for that. Please let me know in the comments what you think about Camilla and Charles, their wedding, my metaphor for it. I'm sure some of you will hate that. That's okay. Tell me in the comments. And do you agree that she looked beautiful? Did you admire the loveliness of that day, even if you don't love the way that they got there, but just the way that we don't often see a middle-aged or even pushing older-aged woman being celebrated in that way, and her beauty being noted, and her being the star of the show. We don't often see that. We don't see it in Hollywood. We don't see it on the world stage very often. And so it's fairly rare for a woman's older beauty to be admired and celebrated, and yet it was on that day, and that's interesting. I loved the queen. I loved her kind of knowing that the whole country was hanging on what is she going to say about this, and she talks about racing and then says it. It's so classic Queen Elizabeth, isn't it? Well, have a great day. I hope to see you back next time for The Prince's Next Door. How exciting is this that we're to that point? Have a great day.